Hi YouTube, back once again with the beer in tow. Just wanted to make a quick video. I was watching a couple of videos of people talking about their move from being like a kind of SJW left-wing megalomaniac and kind of moving away from that. And I just wanted to talk about my story on that as well, because I think a lot of us have these stories, and you know, I think it kind of, there's always these like defining moments that kind of start turning us. And I remember mine, I remember mine were like, I had a couple that really stood out to me. And one of the first ones is that I went to an anti-fascist rally in Cardiff at one point. This was roughly when I was like 23 or so. I'm 26. No, it was earlier than that. I would have been like something like 22 roughly, and I'm 26 now. So it's been a bit of a journey over the last couple of years. But I went to an anti-fascist rally with my friend, and well, there was a couple of us. It turned out that these fascists didn't actually show up in the end. So there was an anti-fascist rally, but there was no actual fascists to fight against or whatever, or oppose. But I noticed that the whole tone of the anti-fascists was pretty damn fascist, essentially. Like a lot of the things, like the slogans they had on signs and stuff like that were like, you know, essentially like put them in the ovens kind of thing. And I was just a bit like, whoa, wait a minute, like who's like, I started to realise, like, because it was my first, I'd been to protests and stuff before, but I'd never been to an anti-fascist protest before. And it was one thing for me to say, like, if there were slogans on signs that said, like, we love black people, or something like that, just like counter opinion to them, like, we love the Jews, or something, like, you know, then that to me is like kind of more legitimate. But when it's like straight up like, you can't believe what you believe, then it was a bit like, wait a minute, like, I know that what they believe is pretty fucked up, but the way you're trying to tell them how to live or believe is almost the same thing. Like, in the way that they want people to subscribe to what they believe as being very controlling, and like, you know, we want to fucking put people in ovens or whatever. I mean, essentially they had a similar outlook, and I was just like, for people they didn't like, I mean. And yeah, it just screwed with my head. Like, I was just like, oh fuck, this is kind of weird. And I couldn't stop thinking about it. Like, you know, I told my friend about it, but he was a bit more like, he's still more SJW than I am. We're still very good friends, but he shrugged it off a lot more. Like, he noticed it as well, but he just shrugged it off a lot more. He wasn't quite as sorry, there's a slug on my floor. But yeah, he wasn't quite as perturbed by it as I was. But yeah, and there was some other stuff as well at the time. This is all happening at a very similar time, by the way, similar time frame. And there was some other things as well that I noticed. There was like, with feminism at the time, I just started clocking on to researching some of the things that they spoke about, because I was interested. I was a feminist. Like, I was like, the pay gap, you know, let's look into that, because the pay gap is, you know, something, I want to know where that comes from. Why is there a pay gap, you know? Why have they allowed that to happen? So let's look into the details. And then I looked at the study, where the original study where this came from, in Great Britain. There was a thing that they looked into in Great Britain to get like a pay gap estimate for, you know, British people rather than the American one. And literally on the first paragraph, before you even get into the meat of the thing, it said in it, it was like, these are average earnings and don't represent individuals. So it's like as soon as you get, and like it essentially said, as soon as you get to the individual level, there's basically there's no pay gap between people who work the same jobs and the same hours, regardless of their gender. And I and I remember reading that and just being like, oh, like I just remember being like, what the fuck? Like it was like reality was like kind of crashing down. In a way, it was a similar thing to leaving the church and deciding that God and all that stuff wasn't real. It was a similar effect of just kind of realizing that the reality that I'd spun for myself or had been spun for me was actually just a fabrication. Like maybe there was some truth to it at some point in time, but they hadn't bothered to update it, if that makes sense. They hadn't bothered to update their point of view and the talking points that they have to the modern day. So when I realised that, I was like, oh fuck. So I remember I put a thing up on Facebook about it, because I was like, hey guys, look, the pay gap doesn't exist. I just looked at this and this is what this is. Literally, the amount of pushback I got from that was unreal. Like, I mean, I could talk all day about Christianity on Facebook and just be like, Christians are some fucked up pieces of shit. You know, I could literally just say that and no one would bat an eyelid. In fact, I'll probably get some likes or whatever. But as soon as I said, oh, the pay gap doesn't exist and here's why, and I put the thing up, and they were just like, even with the evidence, they were just like, it was, yeah, well, it's not really about the earning the same money in the same job, is it? It's just about CEOs and stuff like that. We need more women CEOs and stuff like that. And I was just like, what? And then they were just like, there was also loads of people just going, well, historic oppression though, huh? Like, and I was just like, well, yeah, and like, what's that got to do with right now? Like, if this is, I mean, I'm not seeing. I've got three sisters. They're not being oppressed by the system or anyone else. You know what I mean? Like, I'm pretty sure the vast majority of women in this country are not. You know what I mean? Like, and if they are, it's not really from the system. It's like people in their lives, like abusive parents and things like that. Really, maybe boyfriends and stuff. So it's like, come on, man. Like, what the fuck are you talking about with like this historical oppression thing? Like, yeah, you can't just keep running that narrative all the time. Like, it's like, what are you gonna do when, like, okay, so like, let's say women ruled the world and they were like oppressing everybody. Are we all just gonna sit there and like just take it because they were oppressed in the past? Like, are we all just gonna go? Are we all just gonna go, oh yeah, I'll take the lashings, please. Yeah, just give me the lashings. Throw me in shackles. Throw me in prison. I'll get arse raped. I don't give a shit because you were oppressed in the past. Well, not you literally, but your ancestors were oppressed at some point in the past. It's just like so. It's just nonsensical. It's a nonsensical way of thinking about things that, like, because of historical oppression, therefore we need to make compensations today. No, the compensations that are made are the changes in law and attitude in culture. That's the only things we can do, and we can't really expect or ask any more than that. You know what I mean? Like, so you can't like start trying to make exceptions and special rules for people just because, you know, 100 years ago women couldn't vote or something like that. You know, it's just so silly. Other things I started to realise as I was getting older was that I realised that my attitude of, because there is a very heavy attitude of like, things aren't your fault in the SJW world. So for instance, if I've got a crappy job and it's hard for me to get by in life, well, that's not really my fault. That's the whole system that's trying to keep me down. And I need to rise with the rest of the proletariat and fist them a new arsehole, kind of a thing. And I started to realise that actually it was just me having a bad attitude that was keeping me down. And, I mean, there are other reasons as well. But fundamentally it was me that was the problem, and I needed to work on myself in order to become better in the world. Now, that's still a process for me, because I'm not going to lie, I've had a lot of problems with my sexual abuse and things like that, so of course that's played different parts of my life. But at the same time, I also don't want to use that as a proper excuse, because if anything, I'd like to say that I'd be able to get over that and continue in my life. But there's parts of me that are really annoyed at myself as well for wasting so much time on this ideology that has been so detrimental to me in a lot of respects. I mean, there's some aspects of the SJW culture which is good. I mean, there's some element of trying to be fair and trying to have a good outlook and trying to be as what's the word? Conscientious as possible, I suppose. But I started noticing that like there were just loads of double standards and stuff like that. I started to notice there were loads of double standards with feminism. I started to notice there were just loads of double standards in regards to how particular people are perceived, particular groups. I started to realise when all these terms like white privilege started to come about and stuff like that, and I was just like, well, how does this work then? If like, because I've lived in council estates. Council estates are essentially like the ghettos of Britain, and like I've lived in council estates where it's primarily white people. So if a white person is getting robbed and stuff like that, and they're living in squalor, and they've got drunk parents, drug addict parents, and they're basically living on the breadline, and they're being taken into foster care and all this kind of stuff. But then you've got a black person who lives, I don't know, maybe in a slightly different area, middle class, always got the brand new clothes, brand new trainers, always got the new Apple phone, stuff like that. How, just because for some reason, there was this concept that just because they are black, that they still have it worse, somehow. Like, or, because like the white privilege thing is weird. It's like, because I understand that the concept is meant to be like, oh, we should understand that people can be treated differently because of their skin colour. But I don't know if that's a privilege or not a privilege, because white people can still be treated differently for their skin colour. So, for instance, if I go into like a shisha bar where there's loads of Asians and I'm one of the only white people, then I get funny looks. I get treated in a slightly different way. If I go to... I remember this one time me and my friends went to a Chinese place, like a particularly Asian place in Cardiff, and it was a very Chinese place, so like in the sense that pretty much everyone in there was like Chinese, and we were pretty much the only white people in there. And again, we were getting kind of funny looks. We were probably a little bit irreverent for a Chinese place, because obviously we've got a slightly different culture, we're a bit more boisterous and whatever, and yeah, like, you know, so they didn't hate us, but obviously they could tell that they were like, oh, these fucking white people coming in here. But like, I don't mind too much, but I have been treated differently by people of different colours for my skin colour as well. And you know, for people to act like that doesn't exist is kind of annoying. And they also, I think the thing that they usually talk about is that it's mainly to do with like police and stuff that can like affect your life in a big way, like teachers or police and stuff like that. But I remember like the black, there wasn't loads of black or minority kids in my school, because I grew up in North Wales as well, which is a particularly white area. But I remember like the ones that were there were never really singled out at all. In fact, most of them did pretty well, and no one really gave a shit. You know, the naughty kids were the ones that were picked out, and the naughty kids were just the naughty kids, and that was that. Like, and most of them were white, if I remember rightly. Like, I remember there was one black lad who was a bit of a dick in our school, but even he calmed down by the end and wasn't really getting into trouble anymore and stuff. So, you know, like, it's just sometimes, like, I started to realise with the SJW thing, there was like a disconnect from reality. And I started to realise as well that people were like over-accentuating things. So, for instance, people would talk about some of my friends and stuff would talk about politics, and they talk about like the Prime Minister at the time, which was David Cameron. and they talk about him and Boris Johnson and stuff, and they talk about him like essentially like in the way that like they were like ruling the world and manipulating everyone, and they were behind all the right wing press, and they were like literally like had the whole world on a spindle, and were like masterminding all these attacks and all these things so they can go to war and blah 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 and whatever. And I would never say never to this kind of thinking, because I wouldn't put it past world leaders to have certain influences and also try to manipulate the world to fit them and their needs. But at the same time, I couldn't also help but feel that they were giving them a lot of credit. Like, they were giving them a lot more credit than what I thought they really deserved. And also, they are still very busy people. Like, if you really think about it, like, they're going around, they're looking over all these papers for new policies, they're trying to implement policies, going around talking to people all the time. They've got to look at new statistics for different things, they've got to draw up budgets, they've got to work out, do loads of complex mathematics on resources, energy, all these crazy things. And they've got to manage the country, imports, exports, trade deals. There could be wars going on, things like that, arms deals, energy deals, like all these things that people have got to do. And then obviously there's constantly mishaps going on with murders and atrocities going on, so then people are trying to help clear that up and do something about that. And like, it just started getting me thinking that, like, yeah, amongst all this chaos, there'll definitely be some world leaders that are trying to manipulate this situation and change it for their own gain. But I also think a lot of it is really out of their hands as well. I think a lot of the time, shit just happens, and they kind of just try to capitalize on it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And like I say, like, they're just all human beings like we are. And sometimes when I'd bring this up, like, I'd give this kind of opinion, like, oh, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to do what they think is right. And, like, I'm not saying that what they are doing is right, but just what they think is right, and maybe that's just how it goes. Like, the venom that I would get back just for even daring to think that was like, fuck. I remember, like, one of my friends kind of almost having a go at me, kind of shouting at me, like chastising me in the pub one time because of saying something like along those lines of like, oh, I just don't know if these politicians have quite as much power as we give them credit for, and stuff like that. And like, and it was just like, no, fuck you, kind of a thing. And I was like, what? Jesus, I thought we were friends here. Like, why are you getting so hostile with me? At least just talk it out with me. That's the thing. Like, and like, to be fair, once I started like kind of changing and being more vocal with my opinions on this kind of thing, it was a difficult time because a lot of people started alienating me and not really wanting to talk to me, and everybody I felt was walking on eggshells because they thought that I would just basically try and start arguing with them about their beliefs all the time, which is not really what I wanted to do. But I feel like there was a lot of talk about me at the time because I was one of the first people in my social groups to start talking about these kinds of things, and also quite vocally on Facebook and very publicly. I didn't keep it behind closed doors with one-on-one friends and stuff like that, people I could trust. I put it out there for people to see because I thought, fuck it, like, for better or for worse. But in a way, it did harm me in some ways, though, because I had a little bit of for like about a year, I had like some really strong anxiety about all my social interactions because I felt that people were viewing me through a very different lens, and it worried me because I thought that they thought I was a different person now when I was the same person. I just felt that I'd found out different information, and I was worried that just like essentially just nobody liked me anymore, just because I had slightly different opinions, and that really disappointed me. It like really made me upset. Like, And I don't know how true any of that really is. And a lot of these people now that I used to think that about are fine with me now. Although I do find that it's very rare that I'm invited to places anymore. I don't really get invited anymore. I used to get invited a lot. I used to be a very popular person. And then now, as soon as I decided that I was trying to open myself up to the truth and be an open-minded person, I find now that I'm not really invited. I'm allowed, like, people will tolerate me, so if I'm there, if I'm at the pub and people are going back to somebody's place for a party or whatever, they'll be like, oh, are you coming with us? Yeah, come with us, kind of a thing. But nobody ever gets hold of me in advance. Like, if somebody is holding a party or having an event or something like that, like, it's very rare that I actually get a proper invite anymore. Like, even just for casual hanging out. Like, my friends casually hang out a lot, but I pretty much never get a text from them saying, like, oh, you're going to come hang out, you're going to come round today or whatever. You know, things like that. But it's fine, because there's been a few people who've switched more to, like, the right side, and, like, as in right-wing stuff. And, funnily enough, they're the ones that are actually more accepting of me and asked to hang out and stuff like that. So I found a new kind of thing. It's still a little tough because I'm not as right wing as them, but they're way more willing to have these discussions with me and talk it out and not get heated. And even if it does get a little heated, like, not to leave it by the by, you know what I mean? Like, it's not really a big deal for them. But yeah, it's just all really weird, and like the transition from SJW to, I don't want to say red pilled, because I don't feel that I'm more enlightened. It's just that I've been able to hold more nuanced opinions in my brain, and that was one of the things that was holding me back as an SJW, is that nuance was a battle. It was a constant battle, because the SJW mentality, you kind of need to have a black and white worldview. And a big part of my journey through transitioning from SJW to whatever I am now, I don't even know, just to liberal, I guess, was that increasingly I was looking into the grey area. I was looking into the middle of things and trying to find where that truth could lie. Because I knew that, you know, the more I looked into studies and who funded them, the more I looked into media and what was going on there and the games they're playing, the more I got into propaganda, the more I got into all these different things that about how people try and manufacture and manipulate the masses and their mind and their psyche. The more I got into all that kind of thing and politicians and stuff, the more I started to realise that the grey area is where the truth is, because they're all trying to do that. Even these factual statistics and studies and stuff like that usually have some angle to them, and there's usually some funding to it. And if you can find one study that says, you know, smoking is bad for your lungs, you can bet your bottom dollar there's a friggin' study out there that says, well, smoking maybe just a small amount can be good for you in a different way, or something like that, right? Which is obviously ridiculous. I mean, it should just be a logical thing to know that if you smoke a cigarette, there's carbon monoxide going in your lungs, that's going to be bad for your lungs. That's essentially all it should take. You shouldn't even have to do a study on that, really. You know, just from the science that we know. But that's the whole thing, isn't it? That's what I'm getting at is, you know, especially when it comes to social sciences in particular over like hard science like biology and chemistry and stuff. But if you go into like social sciences, like, you know, for instance, if they do a study about, like, for instance, recently they did a study on the cameras that cops have been wearing and their interactions with black people and white people, and who is nicer or whatever. So like who they're nicer to. So it turns out that police are slightly more rude to black people on a more regular basis than white people, although the margin is still quite small, not gonna lie. in the graphs, like the difference between black and white people and how they were treated wasn't actually that big, but it did obviously show that black people were treated in a more rude way. But one thing that the study failed to illuminate on was how the drivers being pulled over were acting towards the police in the first place, and if they were complying, etc., etc. So if you come up to somebody in the car and they're like, hello sir, yeah, do you want me to put the hands on the steering wheel? Okay, yeah, and being, polite and whatever, and then you've got somebody who's just going, man, fucking, I've been pulled over 5 times this week, you fucking piece of shit. Like they're going off on a tangent and getting like crazy angry, then what do you expect? Do you expect, of course, the police officer's going to be rude to you, like regardless of what colour you are. Of course, the police officer's going to be rude. Like, it's just, and that's what made this study kind of annoying, is because they do little things like that and nobody notices. Nobody notices the things that they don't say. And that is frustrating to me. It's very frustrating. The last thing I'll touch on as well with the SJW thing is the arrogance. Holy shit, the arrogance of SJW people is astounding. And that is something that you'll see with like the whole Nazi thing that's come out. Like their whole stance on just punching people and stuff like that, to think that is the right way forward, is literally just the arrogance of how they are. But it's also a testament to the true reality of the nature of that person inside. Like if they, like, it's one thing, for instance, if right-wing extremists actually start trying to set up movements where they are actually killing people and stuff, right? And they actually get around to having organised things where, they have like an SA, they have an SS, they have like some death squads and stuff, which is all stuff Hitler had before he ever even got in power, by the way. So if they start doing stuff like that and we notice it, then yeah, now's the time to put the boot in, essentially. I'd be happy to do that, definitely, to stop them from gaining any more power. But as it stands, they're not doing any of those things. They've not been violent. The first real act of violence has been this Charlottesville thing, really. Whereas for years now, they've been just taking it on the chin. I mean, the Anaheim thing where three KKK members got stabbed. It's like, fuck, it's pretty crazy. Like, they went for a march. There wasn't even that many of them. There was like 20 of them or something like that, maybe less. They went for a little march. Loads of Antifa showed up. Obviously, loads more of them than the KKK. They all show up and just start kicking the shit out of them straight up. Like, there wasn't even discourse, no nothing. They just show up like bam, 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 and a couple of them get stabbed. And it's like, fuck, like, how, like, what do you expect? Like, these KKK members, if you start stabbing them and stuff like that, and especially if it's black people, because there were black people there, like, attacking them and stuff. I mean, what are people on the outside going to see? But they don't think about that. They don't think about the consequences of their actions and the wider audience and the people who sit on the fence and all the different political spectrums, because their whole life is black and white. So it's either justified or it's not. And if you're not on board with it being justified, then you're a sympathizer. And it's like, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating because you can't have a rational discussion with them. It's the same with the Nazis. Like, if you get in with the Nazis, it's hard to have a discussion with them as well, especially if they're very hell-bent on their opinion. Because again, it's a black and white opinion, isn't it? It's just blacks are bad and, the Jews are bad and they're ruling things, so let's just get rid of them, And it's a similar kind of mindset. So in a way, they're two sides of the same coin. And everybody else who's kind of caught in between are actually the grown-ups in the situation. But the only problem is that, in a way, you kind of do need to take a stand in these scenarios for what you believe in, even if it's a slightly more liberal principle that meets in the centre, to stand up and say it and talk about it is kind of important, because the more people that advocate for nuance and centrism and some kind of rational reaction to the world, the more people that could help turn to become rational. I mean, you look at that guy, that black fella who goes around befriending KKK members. He's a perfect example of somebody. Well, just an example that we should all follow, really. I mean, to me, he has a braver stance to take than going to punch Nazis. That's not a brave stance. That's just a plug my ears, go la 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 la. I don't want to know about the problem kind of response. That's what that response is. They don't really want to think about it. They just want to They just want to look. They just want to look justified. They want to look like a good person. They don't want to actually be a good person. And that's what this black fella does. I can't remember his name. I think it's like Daryl something. I can't remember off the top of my head. But some black guy did a little bit about him. So check out his video on Charlottesville. Or Punching Nazis, I think it was actually about. But yeah, he's converted like 200 people plus away from the KKK. So let's put it this way. How many Nazis have been dissuaded from being Nazis, and KKK members and white nationalists from being punched in the face? 0. How many KKK members and white nationalists and Nazi type people have been converted away from their beliefs by befriending a black person? Apparently 200 plus people. I mean, isn't that what fucking American History X is about? That's what American History X is about. Fucking the Nazi goes to prison, makes friends with a black guy, and realises that the whole belief system is bullshit. You know what I mean? Because the black guy doesn't inherently kick the shit out of him for being a Nazi. You know what I mean? It's like, he actually gives him the time of day, but obviously all my friends have seen that movie, but not one of them have learned anything about it. None of them have ever learned a single thing, because they don't really care. And it's just one of the most fucked up things. Like, one of my friends, we were having an argument about this punching a Nazi thing on Facebook, and I was like, yeah, let's just punch everybody that we disagree with, because that's going to solve everything. And essentially he just got back to me and just said, look, I don't have any sympathy for these guys. And I said, look, I'm not saying that we need to have sympathy for them. I'm just saying that it's a slippery slope to go down to start with this political violence bullshit, and to advocate for it. And he was just like, and I was like, so here, look at this. And then he was like, well, good luck dissuading these Nazis from their beliefs. So I posted up about this Daryl fella, who I sent an article his way, and then at that point he was just like, look, I don't want to debate this anymore. I just don't care about them. You know what I mean? Kind of a thing. Like, I don't have any sympathy, so fuck them, kind of a thing. And I was like, and he was like, I'm at a reggae festival. So I can't be asked talking about this anymore, so fuck it. And then I was just like, okay, well, fair enough, mate. Do what you need to do. But, just know that while you're at your reggae festival chanting One Love, that you're also just adding to the problem by just having this attitude. So, whatever, happy. I didn't say this part, but I just said, in my mind, I was just like, yeah, carry on being a hypocrite. Cool. That's really cool of you. It's just, this is what bugs me about it, is that they get so snarky and, whatever. I mean, I know I got bitchy too, but like, to have that such a callous attitude about it is a testament to how they pretend to be the people that are really thinking about the best for society, and they pretend to be the people that are thinking about who what is for the general good, but they are just not. They're just not that at all. They're just arrogant people a lot of the time, and usually not very good people. You know, they're just very selfish, very self-absorbed kind of people. But yeah, that's pretty much it. This video has gone on a lot longer than I wanted it to go on for, but whatever. But yeah, thanks for giving us a watch. I'll see you again soon, I guess. But yeah, hit me up in the comments, give me a like, give me a subscribe if you think my story is any good. But yeah. Oh, and also any British YouTubers who want to have a talk about their journeys or their experiences with SJWs, etc., etc. I would love to do that. I really want to do more collaborative stuff, and mainly because I haven't done any yet, and I would really like to do some. I think it would be pretty good. So, yeah, hit me up. You know, hit me up. Give me the tag me in. You know, tag me in. I'll come in with the hot tag. We'll give them the fucking clotheslines. You know, we'll give them the content that they really need. But yeah, I just, in all honesty as well, I want to do. I just want to bounce off people as well. I find it harder to be entertaining when I'm by myself. I kind of just want to say what I think. But when I'm with other people, I like to poke fun. I like to joke around. So that's kind of why I want to be able to do more collaborative stuff. But hopefully I'll be doing more of that in the future anyway. I've got some of my friends who are interested in taking part in some of these videos, so maybe you'll see some of that in the future. And yeah, hopefully I can interact with some other people from YouTube as well, which would be really nice. So yeah, thanks very much for giving us a watch, and yeah, like, subscribe, do the things, remember. But yeah, see you later.